Gurren Lagann has a pretty diverse cast, although generally a lot more of the show's focus is on the heroes. The themes of the show kind of make that a requirement. However, there are still a good amount of great villains. Viral is, of course, the big takeaway as the antagonist with the most development, though the two big bads of both arcs, the Lordgenome in the child arc and the anti-spirals in the adult arc, are also excellent as intimidating forces and powerful presences. Then, of course, we have the lesser bads, Lordgenome's four generals. None of them are really groundbreaking or astounding characters, but they are, however, very effective for the short periods we get to know them. Let's go over each of them. First in the order is Timilf, the general with the least presence, as he dies after only appearing in 2 episodes. In these 2 episodes, his personality doesn't really get too much time to shine, and as such, I always considered him to be the most boring of the 4. However, what he does have is intimidation. At this point in the series, Viral was really the biggest threat Team Gurren had ever faced, and he was already getting thwarted. The other beastmen had long since lost any kind of intimidation factor and were oftentimes just fodder, sometimes even jokes. Then along came Timilf, with his giant battleship and threatening shadow. He brought back the much-needed feeling of a villainous foil, putting Team Gurren in truly difficult situations again. Ultimately, he is defeated with the first ever Giga Drill break, but at the cost of our beloved Kamina. Compared to the others, Timilf doesn't really stick out too much, but he was introduced at just the right time in my opinion. Secondly, we have Adine, who is probably a fan favorite. Man, I could never guess why, honestly. Real talk though, Adine does assert herself pretty effectively, as she does have a bit more time to shine than Timilf does. Like all the generals, she's very cocky and has a distinct hatred towards humans. But she's also very cunning and cruel, oftentimes using hostages and even the terrain to her advantage. The fights against her are some of my favorite, with the ocean being a very unique place for a battle. Plus, her hinted relationship with Timilf also does give her a reason for fighting Team Gurren that the other generals kind of lack: revenge. All the other generals are fighting for Lordgenome's attention, but Adine does have a second reason, and it adds a personal touch during combat. Even though she is dispatched and unable to avenge her friend, she does leave a good impact on the series. Next, we have Sitomander, who is quite different. At this point, the generals and Lordgenome had already asserted themselves as pretty effective villains, so Sitomander added an extra effeminate flair. His outfit and charisma exude a very high and mighty yet flamboyant personality, so watching him start to snap and go crazy as things don't go his way is, well, very entertaining. Watching his calm demeanor change to wild and insane expressions, as well as watching him go out in practically a Looney Tunes manner, is certainly a highlight of the child arc. I'll just put it that way. And finally, we have Guam, probably my favorite of the group. He's certainly the most effective, as he oftentimes poses the largest threat. He successfully captures all of Team Gurren and almost takes care of Nia, with the scene even hinting at a more sinister face behind his scheming demeanor. It's only until he ends up getting thwarted by Simone not once, but twice, does he break form. Him also being the closest to Lordgenome and oftentimes being the voice of reason, so to speak, among them is also pretty fascinating, as he is easily the oldest, and it makes sense why he'd be the last one to be defeated. Overall, by themselves, the generals are pretty simple villains. They're not overly complex and can be described pretty quickly. But together, not only do they work as a successive unit, coming one after another, oftentimes out of any kind of particular order, they also exemplify the themes of the show and even help build up another character, Viral. Viral literally goes through 3 of the generals. Starting with Timilf, who is oftentimes described as being the most warrior-like, it makes sense that Viral would have a code of honor, a code that was tested a bit with Adine's cruelty towards him and Nia, and tested even further by Sitomander, who asked him to fight an unarmed opponent and even took a hostage. They really show off how effective of an antagonist and character Viral is, building him into the amazing main character he becomes in the adult arc. And as I said, they help to build on the theme of the show. Honestly, if the generals had all worked together, they might have won, at least at certain points. The movie showed a perfect moment that they would completely fail, even working together. But there were times that the generals could have been triumphant. After Timelf's death was a perfect opportunity. But they didn't, because of how competitive they are, vying for Lordgenome's attention. As well as the fact that they hate each other. I mean, sometimes they even insult each other when they go off or as they're dying. The only two with an apparent positive relationship was Adine and Timelf, and he was killed off before she was even introduced, likely on purpose to further alienate all the generals from each other. Team Gurren comes out victorious because they do work together, they plan together, and fight together. They cover each other's weaknesses. The generals plan separately, and though sometimes they came pretty close, their weaknesses were a lot more exposed, making even the slightest changes in the status quo lead to their defeat. Though they're not the most complex and fascinating villains in anime, far from it, they are what they need to be, and that's perfectly alright. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please go ahead and make sure to rate, comment, and subscribe. Check out my other videos. Also make sure to check out my supporters, all their great stuff. I hope you guys have enjoyed Gurren Lagann month, and there'll be another video to come. Pierce 7, my friends.